Hey, my name's Eli Grayson. I'm 24, and a few months ago I found myself driving back into Willow Creek, Nebraska. The kind of town that barely shows up on a map. Endless cornfields on both sides of the road, quiet streets, and a pace of life that never seems to hurry. It's where I grew up. And after 6 years away, it felt strange seeing the old water tower again, like it had been waiting for me the whole time. I left Willow Creek at 18, chasing something bigger, college in Chicago, studying economics, dreaming of a future that looked impressive on paper. But the city wore me down. Long nights, crowded trains, office jobs where every day felt the same, cubicles, spreadsheets, managers who didn't know my name. After bouncing between jobs that drained me more than they paid me, I quit. No big goodbye. I packed my old truck and drove home, not because I had a plan, but because I needed to breathe again. My parents' house still sat at the end of Laurel Street. Same white picket fence. Same creaky porch with green moss clinging to the steps. Dad still spent his days in the garage with classic rock humming from his old radio. Mom still brewed strong black coffee every morning. They didn't ask why I was back or how long I'd stay. Dad just patted my shoulder and told me to take my time. Mom hugged me tight and promised apple pie for dessert. It felt safe, familiar, but it also stirred memories I hadn't touched in years. Right next door lived Harper Dawson. We'd known each other our entire lives. Our moms were best friends. We grew up playing in each other's yards, separated only by that same white fence. I remembered the first time I really noticed her. I was climbing the old oak tree behind our houses, slipped and scraped my knee. Harper ran over with a bandage she'd stolen from her mom and told me heroes don't cry. From that day on, we were inseparable. Summers were ours, blanket forts, water gun fights, fireflies at dusk. Lying on the grass, talking about the stars and what we'd be when we grew up. I wanted to be an astronaut. Harper wanted to be a writer, always telling stories about places we'd escape to one day. Winters were hot cocoa, snowmen that leaned sideways, and Disney movies on VHS. She always rooted for Aladdin. I argued Simba was cooler. Harper had this laugh that made everything feel lighter. Bright eyes that looked like she understood the world better than most. She was brave, curious, and always the one with wild ideas. And the memory that stuck with me the most came from one hot June afternoon when we were 10. We'd spent the day at the town fair. I won a cheap plastic ring from a claw machine, fake diamond, scratched band. Harper was wearing her yellow sundress, holding cotton candy, her hair in pigtails. My hands shook as I held out the ring. I told her that when we grew up, I'd marry her. I asked her to promise she wouldn't marry anyone else. She laughed, but not in a mean way. She slid the ring onto her pinky and nodded seriously, said if I broke the promise, I owed her ice cream for the rest of the school year. We even wrote it down on notebook paper with crayon hearts and hid it in a shoebox in her attic. Our secret promise box. As we grew older, life pulled us in different directions. Different classes. New friends. I played basketball. Harper spent her time volunteering at the library, always with a book in her hands. We still waved from our windows. She still cheered the loudest at my games. But that childhood promise faded into a joke we barely mentioned. Pulling into the driveway that August day, I didn't expect anything to feel different. But as I unloaded my bags, I heard a voice from next door. "Eli, is that really you?" Harper leaned over the fence, hair tied back, wearing jeans and a simple shirt. She looked older, more confident, but her smile was the same. She teased me about coming home and asked if I was leaving again soon. I told her I was staying this time. And the warmth I felt in that moment surprised me. That night, lying in my old bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, I realized coming home wasn't just about my parents. It was about Harper. And maybe that promise we made as kids wasn't as small as I'd always believed. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee drifting through the house. Sunlight spilled through the faded curtains of my childhood room, lighting up the old basketball posters still taped to the walls. For the first time in years, my phone stayed untouched on the nightstand. No emails, no boss waiting, just quiet. I pulled on some running shorts and stepped outside, deciding a jog around the neighborhood might help clear my head. Willow Creek was still half asleep, a few porch lights on. Dogs barking in the distance. The air smelled like damp grass and morning dew. It felt like stepping back into a life I'd almost forgotten. I hadn't gone far when I saw her. Harper was sitting on her front steps, tying her shoes. Her hair was pulled into a ponytail, loose strands brushing her cheeks. When she looked up and saw me, her face lit up. "Perfect timing," she called out. "I was about to run my loop around the lake. Join me." I nodded without thinking. It felt natural, like we'd done this 1,000 times before. We ran side by side, our steps falling into rhythm as the sun climbed higher. She talked easily, telling me about town gossip, who'd gotten married, who'd moved away, and how the library was finally getting new computers. I told her about Chicago, the long hours, the crowds, and how lonely it felt being surrounded by so many people. "It sounds exciting," she said, glancing at me, "but exhausting." She asked what brought me home. I shrugged, admitting I didn't really know. Just that I needed to remember who I was before everything got complicated. She didn't push. She never did. After the run, we stopped by the corner diner. Same cracked vinyl booths. Same old jukebox in the corner. Harper ordered her usual cappuccino with extra foam. I got an iced latte, even though the morning was cool. We talked for over an hour, laughing about old memories and sharing pieces of our present lives. There were no awkward pauses, no pretending, just easy conversation. That afternoon, I started pulling weeds in the backyard, trying to help Dad out. I was knee-deep in dirt when Harper leaned over the fence. "Need help?" she asked. "Looks like a jungle back there." Before I could answer, she climbed over with gardening gloves already on. We worked side by side, teasing each other about who was doing more work. Dirt on our hands, sweat on our brows. At one point she laughed and said, "Remember the forts we built out here? You always had to be the dragon." I laughed, nodding. "You never let me be the hero." She smiled, but her eyes softened. "Feels like yesterday." As the sun dipped lower, Mom brought out lemonade, and we sat on the porch swing. That's when Harper mentioned it. "I still have the shoebox," she said quietly, "the promise box." My chest tightened, but I played it off. "No way!" She nodded. "It's up in the attic." We climbed up together, dust floating in the sunlight. Boxes of old decorations and forgotten toys lined the walls. She found it tucked behind a stack of blankets. The box was worn, crayon scribbles faded. Inside were dried flowers, old marbles, and the folded notebook paper. She read it out loud, smiling at our childish handwriting. Then she pulled out the plastic ring, scratched and dull. "I kept this," she said softly. Back then, it meant everything. It was the first time I thought someone would stay. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I told her I'd always thought of it as a silly kid thing. She shook her head. Not to me. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about her words, about how much life had shaped her while I was gone, how much I didn't know. Over the next few days, we kept finding our way back to each other, helping with chores, long talks over coffee, walks around town that stretched into hours. I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before. The tired look in her eyes after visiting the nursing home. The way she avoided talking about her dad, brushing it off with a quick smile. One afternoon, after my shift at the local hardware store, I stopped by the nursing home. I told myself it was to drop off magazines. But really, I was looking for her. She was sitting alone in the garden, her head in her hands. I didn't rush over. I wrote a short note instead. Told her I was there if she needed anything. Slipped it into her hand as I passed. That night, she showed up at my back door in the rain, wearing a hoodie, eyes red. "Can I come in?" she whispered. As we sat in the quiet kitchen, tea warming our hands, she finally opened up. About her dad forgetting her. About staying in Willow Creek while everyone else left. About loving people who don't always stay. I listened. I held her hand. And for the first time, she didn't pull away. In that moment, I knew something had shifted. This wasn't just childhood memories anymore. This was something real, something fragile, and I wanted to protect it. The days after that night felt different. Not louder or dramatic, just deeper, like something had quietly settled between us. Harper and I didn't talk about what happened in the kitchen or the way she'd leaned into me like she finally let herself rest. We didn't need to. We just kept showing up. I picked up steady work at a small carpentry crew outside town. Honest work, early mornings, sore muscles, the kind of job where you could see what you'd built by the end of the day. Harper stayed busy at the library, running the summer reading program and helping kids pick out books. Some evenings she'd come over with cookies she claimed were leftovers. Other nights I'd wander next door to fix something she mentioned in passing. A loose cabinet hinge. A leaky faucet. Small excuses that always turned into long conversations. We spent more time together without naming it, sitting on the porch as the sun went down, walking the old bike path behind our houses, clearing weeds and laughing when dirt ended up on our faces. Sometimes our hands brushed, and neither of us pulled away. Sometimes the silence stretched, comfortable and warm. But getting close also meant seeing the cracks. Harper carried more than she let on. Her dad's condition was getting worse. Some days he remembered her. Other days he didn't. She visited him constantly, and each visit seemed to take a piece of her with it. She tried to be strong, always changing the subject when it got heavy. But I could see it in her shoulders, the way they slumped when she thought no one was watching. One evening, she came by unannounced. Her smile was gone, her voice barely steady. "He thought I was Mom today," she said quietly. I didn't try to fix it. I just pulled her inside, made tea, and let her sit with it. She leaned against me on the couch, her head resting on my shoulder. The room was quiet except for the clock ticking on the wall. Eventually, she spoke about the years after I left. About staying behind to care for her dad. About the man she thought she'd build a life with, who left when he realized she couldn't. "People leave," she said softly. "That's just how it goes." I covered her hand with mine, told her she wasn't alone anymore, not with big promises, just the truth, that I was here. And for now, that was enough. We had our rough moments, too. One night, I came home exhausted and brushed her off without meaning to. She noticed. She always did. She told me not to shut her out like she was just the neighbor. Then she left, the screen door slamming harder than usual. The next morning, I showed up at her door with wildflowers from the field near the lake. No speech, no excuses, just honesty. She smiled, shook her head, and let me in. We raked leaves in silence until she laughed and threw a handful at me. We called a truce without saying the word. The turning point came on a stormy night in late September. Rain slammed against the windows. Wind rattled the trees. I was reading when there was a sharp knock at the door. Harper stood there soaked, holding a dish of lasagna, her hands shaking. "I didn't want to be alone," she said. We ate quietly as thunder rolled outside. Then she looked at me, eyes searching. "Do you remember that promise?" she asked. "From when we were kids." I nodded. "I'm not asking you to keep it," she said. "But if things get hard, if I get weak, will you stay?" Quote. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not that kid anymore," I said, "but I choose you. Every day." She broke then. Tears she'd been holding back for years spilled over. I pulled her into my arms and held her as the storm raged outside. No fixing, no rushing, just being there. When the rain softened, she looked up at me. I leaned in and kissed her. Slow, gentle, real. It wasn't fireworks, it was comfort. It was certainty. And in that quiet kitchen, I knew I wasn't just home anymore. I was exactly where I belonged. After that night, everything fell into place without either of us forcing it. We didn't sit down and define what we were or make big announcements. We just started living it. Together. One day at a time. I settled into steady work as a carpenter at the local mill. The hours were long, my hands rough and sore, but for the first time I felt proud of what I was building. Harper stayed at the library, organizing story hours and helping kids discover their favorite books. In the evenings, we'd sit side by side on the couch, reading in comfortable silence, her feet tucked under a blanket, my arm resting behind her shoulders. We adopted a scruffy dog from the shelter and named him Lucky. He chased squirrels in the yard and curled up at our feet at night. Mornings became our favorite ritual. Coffee on the porch, cool air, Lucky running circles around us. No rush, no pressure. But life didn't stop being hard. Harper's dad continued to fade. Some days he smiled at her like he knew her. Other days he didn't. Each visit took something out of her. I learned how to be there without words. A warm meal, a quiet walk, letting her cry when she needed to, holding her when she felt like she couldn't be strong anymore. Winter came early that year. Snow covered Willow Creek in a soft hush. Somewhere between moving my clothes into her house and hanging lights together, it became home. Christmas Eve, we sat by the fire, Lucky asleep nearby, snow falling outside the window. Harper reached into a drawer and pulled out the old plastic ring. "I don't need that promise anymore," she said. "I just need you here tomorrow." I pulled out a simple silver band I'd bought in Omaha. No diamonds, no speeches. "I won't promise forever," I said, "but I'll choose you every day." She slipped it on and smiled through tears. Now, we sit on the porch together, watching snow drift past the porch light. Her hand in mine, Lucky at our feet. Willow Creek quiet around us. I joked once that I'd marry her when we grew up. Turns out, growing up wasn't about keeping a childish promise. It was about choosing each other again and again. And that promise, I'm proud to keep.